Love having our legal expert in the studio. We have Mark Weisleder, and we've got some great advice regarding cottaging. So, Mark Weisleder, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Erin. Simon, it's great to be
having
here.
you as always, buddy.
Oh, it's always great to be here.
Yeah, and we love having you. And you're now talking about when it comes to buying cottages, there's 6 things that you must ask. So I'm going to throw them out there, and maybe you can expand on that. Is that all right?
Sure,
So the
thank
first
you.
one you're saying is make sure that you get an inspection.
You know, when you buy a house in the city, that's probably the main thing you have to worry about, a home inspection, because the home inspector can get in there, look at everything, and tell you whether it's a good or bad investment. With a cottage, you have to do a home inspection, but that's just the beginning. That's the thing. It's only the beginning. So, of course, you have to have a home inspection of the cottage itself. But as we'll see, there's a lot more you got to be concerned about.
And when we're talking about home inspections in the city, I mean, Simon, we know that they're winter-proof homes. I mean, they have working furnaces, but up in cottage country, I mean, you could have places that are only with a wood stove or are only heated with baseboard heating. I mean, it's very different. So you have to understand what it is you're buying. And of course, banks are very particular about what they'll lend on as well, right? All right, so number 2, is the water drinkable?
That's a great question. You know, you take for granted in the city, you turn on the taps and you drink the water and everything's fine. Up in cottage country, there's 2 things you need to worry about. Number 1, is the water drinkable? And you got to get tests done by the local health department. And number 2, is there enough water coming from the well for normal household use? If your cellar is, let's say, an elderly couple, 2 people, and you're a family of 6, is there going to be enough water for normal household use when all the kids start coming up, using the shower, etc.? So this is why you've got to test both of those things before you buy.
All right. Number 3, how's the septic system? So permit, malfunctions, inspection, pumps, MOE.
You know, again, when you live in the city, you take for granted, you flush the toilet, you're connected to the municipal systems, everything works, other than when we have these terrible storms and everything backs up, as we can all remember. But up in cottage country, every property has their own system. Could have been installed 20, 25, 30 years ago. And the regulations regarding these systems have changed. They're much more expensive to do now. So if a system fails, and they can, then you're looking at maybe $20,000, $30,000. So again, you need a separate system check on the entire septic. And the good news is they're usually local experts who can come to do that for you.
And it's not usually that expensive either. I mean, you can get somebody, I mean, it's really just a visual inspection. It literally takes 5-10 minutes. And if there's no problems, they can see right away. And then if there are problems, now that requires a little bit more extensive analysis. And
the seller may also be able to recommend the person who has been pumping out the system
Absolutely.
and maintaining it for years. That person knows the system, and that maybe somebody, again, who has more local knowledge about the system itself.
And knows it and has been dealing and servicing it. And at the same time, you would want to probably ask for them to pump it out, of course, prior to closing. Just a little suggestion. Yeah. Okay?
And what's this next point, Mark, dealing with road allowance?
A lot of people don't realize that when your cottage is next to the lake, in most cases, you don't own the 66 feet from the edge of the water up. And so that's typically owned by the municipality, which means that other people can use that area and path and to go swim in the water. And so it's possible that your cottage is actually sitting on land that you don't own. And this is another reason in the cottage country where you may need to see a survey to know exactly where your cottage is. The good news is it is possible in most places to buy this road allowance, but it does mean going to the town, passing a bylaw. In my experience, you're looking at $6,000 to $10,000 to actually acquire ownership of this piece of land so you make it yours.
So we're going to go on to number 5, which is hydro easements.
This is not a usual subject, but if there are hydro poles around your property, it's very possible that hydro has these easements, which may not be registered against title, but still affect your property. So it's very important, and lawyers know where to search to make sure whether or not there are these easements, which again could cause problems if, let's say, you want to build an addition on your cottage, and that addition is right in the middle of this easement. And you know, Erin, you raised a good point about local knowledge. It's very important to use a real estate agent who's local, who understands all these things. They know the guy who does the inspections for the well, for the septic system. They understand the shore road allowance. They've been to the council. They know what's involved to do that. And that's why you've got to use an agent, local, who understands these issues, because they can help you navigate through it.
I think you bring up a great point, because we get, with the access that everybody has to information online right now, it's very easy for somebody to say, hey, I'm looking for a cottage. Can my cousin George go handle the deal for me? And then maybe give me a break on legal fees or what have you. And you're right. You don't know what you're getting into. I mean, I know the city. I don't know cottage country. I would defer to somebody like Erin. And absolutely, it's a very, very critical point.
It was funny. When I did my very first cottage property purchase as a lawyer, I remember that I had to send a letter to the Ministry of Environment to ask about something. And I got a letter back saying, you got to call the health department. So I called the health department. I said, okay, I'm asking about this property. And they said, no, you got to call the Ministry of Environment. So I'm looking at both letters and I'm not even knowing who to call. So I called the town. I said, what am I doing? Oh, they said, oh, that's Bill.
Yeah.
So I looked in my logbooks and there was nowhere that said call Bill. But you see, this is why you need someone with the local knowledge to know who to call, no matter what the problem is.
We could save you a lot of time for sure. All right, number 6, access to the cottage. So, of course, year-round zoning, municipal road, right-of-way.
When you live in a house, you just assume you have access from the city street to your house, and they're going to plow the snow in the wintertime. They're going to look after it. In the cottage country, it's all different. You may not have access in the winter to your property. There may not be year-round snow shoveling. The city may say we are not responsible. So then how do you get to your property? Lots of times there are these easements,
helicopters,
or easements that may or may not appear, and then you get. I've heard of neighbors up there shooting each other.
Oh yeah.
When there's complaints about boundaries and easements, etc. And you don't want to buy a lawsuit. You want to make sure when you're moving in that you have unobstructed, easy access to your property, and this is one of the things you got to make sure.
Yeah, and ask those questions. And I think also when we're looking at listings again on the MLS system or Realtor.ca. The beautiful thing is that on those cottage boards, they'll have those areas where you can see what type of road it is. So it's either municipal maintained, municipal road, it's a private road, year-round access, private road, seasonal. So right there, it's telling you what you're dealing with. Because you can fall in love with the pictures and say, oh my goodness, I want that place. But guess what? You can't go there all year round. It's just not possible. Where sometimes you have what we call road associations, where you can pay a fee, where you're contributing towards the plowing. If that's something that you're comfortable with, then of course you can use it all year round. So you really have to understand it's not like down here where you have the use of the roads and you can get access all year round.
Even in the city, we recommend that people when they're buying, don't be afraid to talk to the neighbors.
Oh, of course.
Talk to the neighbor on one side, talk to the neighbor on the other, and then talk to the neighbor across the street and just get a feel for the area, the neighbors and so on. And I got a feeling that this is even more important when you're in cottage country to find out who are you going to be living or cottaging next to, what's sort of the inside information, and I think you can learn a lot just by doing that as well.
All right. So if you have any questions, of course, regarding cottage real estate or anything else regarding real estate for Mark Weisleder, of course, you can go to our website, realestatetalkshow.ca, and we'll make sure we pass those on to Mark, and he answers every single one. Don't you, Mark?
I really try to, and I really enjoy the questions that come from viewers. I find them always interesting, and it's a pleasure for me to help.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here yet again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Simon.
Got to have you back. So much more to talk about.
All right.